I'll go grab a bit of water.
Sure.
Funny thing is, the more I read about read the new PubSub, the more I think that it might have been a good idea in resource directory as well to split between the resource that is representing the registration and the companion resource that is that contains the links that the registrant wants to publish.
Back.
Because at some point, when there's, for example, when the resource directory is proxying for the registrant, the registrant might want to know a few details of where it is being proxied from. And right now, the only way to get this is to treat like registration lookup question mark endpoint equals my endpoint name to get those details. And that kind of works, and that is kind of, those are kind of the two resources, but it's a bit of a stretch.
Anything you can kind of hack using location path?
And the thing is, we already use so we already use location path.
Right.
So really, this is if anything that and the thing we are pointing to is the data resource in PubSub terminology, and we can't really meddle with that because that is kind of under the control of the registrant. So yeah.
Sorry, guys, are you talking about the PubSub draft or something else?
I was musing like until we are starting officially about how reading PubSub makes me wish that we had taken a few of the points that PubSub makes into resource directory and also done the split between the registration, like the data resource and the registration resource, so to speak, baked in there. It's we kind of have it, but to get there is a bit backward.
So you mean like are you talking the topic configuration resource?
Yeah, exactly. So that in resource directory terminology, the topic configuration resource is kind of the resource, the registration lookup resource filtered down to a particular endpoint that kind of takes the same role.
Yeah, but it's not explicit, you mean?
It's not explicit, yes, and it's not following the HTOS principles, but it's kind of depending on the RD application. And to use it, you don't have to just look up where you register, but also where you do resource lookup, and it's a bit convoluted. Anyhow, I think we're approaching the time that Marco, you said you wanted to start. So
just checking. Karsten, are you back on keyboard? Oh, cool. Then yeah, let's get started. Welcome everyone to this interim meeting of the co-working group. I'm Marco Tiolka, my co-chairs are Jaime Jimenez and Karsten Dorman. And as usual, the not well applies. Please get confident with that if you're not already. It's not just about IPR, but also in the special about our conduct. So be nice and professional with one another. And we have quite a nice and growing agenda for today. We are right now in pole position CoreConf with some updates on Seed and Coma from Karsten, and then updates on the ongoing update of the PubSub draft from Jaime. Then Esko will go through some outstanding open points on the group conbis document following a review from John post working group as call actually. And then there's 2 more points raised from ESCO, if I'm not wrong, recently on the notes that is worth discussing. And last item, at least for now, is some planning on the next interim meetings. If there's no further topic, I think Jaime was really hoping to be first to present. Would that work for you, Karsten?
Quick announcement, document status. So target attributes just was approved by Rob Wilton. So the announcement is not yet sent, but he has approved it. So we will have a registry for target attribute names soon.
Congrats.
Congrats, Karsten and all. Okay, so Jaime, you can take the floor.
So will I share this? Are you sharing the slides or should I?
You can share them yourself, just take control.
Just a second. Shares, CoreConf, co-op. So I prepared quickly some slides today, mostly updating from the ones from last April. So there has been, so as a recap, quick. So by the way, Marco, how much time do I have at the end? Because since there has been some reshuffling.
I think even 15 or 20 minutes would work, but
okay. I can do a 10-minute presentation and then we can focus on the discussion because it's a small group anyways. And feel free to jump in anytime. So as you remember, PubSub has been there already for quite some time, and we spent a bit of time this year to try to wrap it up based on some design inspiration from the Klaus's Thing2Thing RG PubSub draft and Marco's group admin draft. So version 12 already introduced the new resource structure with a topic collection under which there is topic configurations with some properties, and on which of one of the properties being a topic data. That is the thing that publishers and subscribers can interact with. So that's basically the same design as we have today. I can show you basically, as you know, the publication and subscription pattern uses co-op as protocol. So co-op clients are both publishers and subscribers, and the operations are put on a topic resource and get with observe on another topic resource, and that's how the subscription pattern happens. I will just skip this part quickly because there is nothing new there. On the topic, well, again, the topic structure, basically you have a topic collection resource on top that allows you to discover the list of topic configurations. You can fetch by using specific resource types the topic configurations that you're interested in, and you can create new topic configurations under this collection. Topic configurations, again, like you can create them, you can delete them and update them and so on. And the properties basically are attributes that allow you to tweak how the publishers and the subscribers interact with each other. How, for example, how many subscribers can you have? Do you want to give it a specific topic name that matches your application? That type of stuff. Let's move on. As I said, the topic data resource is a resource that is created. So it's a resource created during the topic configuration phase. So a client, which is probably some sort of administrator role, creates the topic, provides these properties, and creates and the broker creates a placeholder resource for the topic data. Then at some point, a publisher publishes, and the topic is in a state that is fully created. I will go into the life cycle in a moment. Until then, basically, it's just a placeholder. And then on this topic data resource, you can do the usual publish, subscribe type of interactions. So subscription, publication, read the latest value, or delete a topic if you have the right authorization, subscribe and unsubscribe, and so on. So that's a very quick overview. A new thing that this draft introduced in version 12, the previous one, was the concept of life cycle of the topic. So topics are not fully created by default. When you create the topic data, you are not creating a fully functional resource, so to speak, but a placeholder. So you create, you do a post under the collection resource. You create the topic configuration. You can see here on the left side of the screen. You provide some parameters, as I mentioned before, like topic name, resource type, media type, anything you want to. I mean, maybe there's no point of going through the parameters, but so that you are aware of it. And then you will that will return from the broker a location. By the way, the paths are of course not static. You need to use discovery for this to find the path for the collection and to find the path for every other resource. In the draft, for example, for explanation purposes, I'm using -ps and /ps and /data, but you can use any other. And then at that point, the topic is half created. And then when a publisher finally publishes something on that particular resource, subscribers can then start receiving notifications, can subscribe. And the topic changes to fully created. Similarly, if you delete the topic data, you go back to half created state. And the topic is only fully deleted when you delete the topic itself, the topic configuration itself. Anyway, so all of this is, let's not go into the workflow because I think this is still known already from the last part. There is, as I said in the previous IETF, I did a quick implementation using IO Co-op as base, and it was relatively easy to do. I will update it on the hackathon. By the way, I dropped this now. If anybody's interested to interop or to play along with this implementation, I'll be happy to onboard them and to test the stuff. So please join the hackathon in the next IETF. So we have some discussion items from the previous IETF. So the questions were, are there some topic properties missing or underspecified? We actually did a bit of an exercise trying to find new one, and we added another one, and we'll go back into that a bit later. Then topic name is an application identifier. So do we need some UUID space for it? Basically the conclusion on that one was that as long as it's unique per collection, is fine, that we don't really need to mandate anything specific there. Then the max subscriber, as it is on the draft now, is basically treated with the normal co-op or observe response when it's when you reach max subscribers. So basically you cancel the observation and then you just get the latest notification. Then on the authorization part, basically we will be following the ACE working group draft on co-op PubSub. So that part should go on the security considerations. That's not yet finished. And actually, I will get to the main new things from the slide. So basically, these were the things to be worked out for the next version, which is version 13, which is the one I've been working on. And these are the items that actually were achieved. So let's start with the things that were done, and then we go into the things that are still missing, if you don't mind. So we have now the IANA section. We corrected the text for max age to treat it correctly. We did change the examples and make sure that I think not all of the examples, actually, most of them have some CBOR formatting examples, if I'm not mistaken. Then the observer check property that was added to the properties to regulate the subscribers list. Then basically there was no discovery for topic collection, so I added that too. I also added a few examples. Then there were some comments from 2019 on the GitHub issue tracker, so I replied to those because they were kind of a bit orphan. Just to wrap it up, basically. There has been, actually, if you check the diff, there has been a lot of changes, not on the fundamentals, but clarifications and editorial stuff, and rewording, rephrasing, providing more examples. And then I also addressed Marco's very extensive review for the most part. A few things are still missing, and I get to those right now. So first, the security section is in progress. I will try to work on it and have a version before the next IETF. But basically, I will try to refer to the ACE draft and try to get inspiration from the GenAdmin and from other similar security considerations oriented drafts. But I mean, a lot of the fundamental security considerations are of course covered by COAP and DTLS and OSCORE. And then maybe the item that could be for discussion today, but I'm open to discuss anything. The topic configuration and data resources, where should they be hosted? Because the intention before was to do the following, to have the possibility that a COAP server is hosting the topic data resource for a topic configuration. So someone will be creating a topic configuration, and during the creation time, it will place it will also send the full URL of the where this resource is hosted, which is in a different server, and then subscribers can find it and subscribe to it directly in a distributed fashion. So it wouldn't be hosted at the broker. So initially, this sounds like a simple thing to do, but actually it implies that it's more complex than it seemed at first. So if we do this, a lot of the properties of the broker, a lot of the state that is kept in the broker, now it needs to somehow be shared between these two, and therefore you need a protocol between the two servers to make sure that the state is updated. Again, it also messes up a bit the lifecycle part, because if you delete the topic data, then you need to inform. So if the COAP server 2 deletes the topic data resource, it needs to inform the broker in somehow, so that it changes the state of the topic configuration resource. And just like for topic data, it happens for anything else. Like if you reach a maximum subscribers, or if there is some error or some problem of some kind. So basically, it's not trivial, unless we don't want to track anything in the broker. That's also a possibility. And basically, that's the high-level overview, and that's where we are at. I went very quickly through it. Sorry for that. Please jump in.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm not managing the queue, by the way.
can you hear me?
I hear you well.
Okay. Yeah, I hear some echo now. And I had a question on the previous picture, actually. If you can go back to that. So, yeah, that's the one. So you mentioned the difficulty of implementation there. So is that not something that the implementer has to decide how to make that interface and make it work? Because it does not have to be a standardized interface there, right? To talk between the two servers here.
Right. I mean, like we could. So my assumption was that we want a draft that has normative language at the end of the day. I mean, I don't know about the scope. I mean, of course, you could just leave it up to the implementation, but I think that would be a bit, leaving it in hanging, so to speak. I mean, we discussed that maybe we could just leave the draft open enough so that anybody else could feel free to produce another draft that specifies that behavior. But I think that it's not easy to implement. Maybe it's easy to implement. I don't know. To me, it sounds more complicated than it seems initially.
Yeah, because you can imagine there could be even, for example, I define two servers with maybe different addresses or IP addresses or host names,
Yeah.
but eventually they could point to the same machine that has a maybe relatively simple implementation locally. So it could look like two servers, but it could still be on the same machine, or maybe it's on two machines, but there's some very fast, some very fast network connection between the two machines, so then they can keep things synchronized internally. So in that case, yeah, I just wonder if there's a problem there. Could just allow this. I mean, of course, the specifications should say what is required of that implementation. I'm just saying it should not be impossible to achieve, at least.
No, it's not impossible. I mean, my concern is that it was not as straightforward as I hoped, and the PubSub draft itself is pretty big already. So I wanted to try to finish it first, also because it has been so long in core. So I wanted to maybe like have the basic stuff done, and then extensions could be added.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm just wondering why should there be a reason to explicitly forbid this kind of operation, or do we just leave it for the future?
Right. Not for, so that's a good point. Basically, I mean, this is a very good point actually. How to express it, because right now the topic data is something that we explicitly say that is created by the broker. So the topic data resource, the placeholder. We could leave it open, but then again it's a slippery slope, because if you don't define it well, you need to come up with maybe I don't know, a section with KVATs if you use the topic data hosted in another server. But if you do that section, then you might as well have a different draft as well, or a 3 more sections defining it properly. So that's what I mean. Like it's hard to define it in a light fashion, at the same time mandating something specific. So anyway, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's important to think about the ways we're going to evolve this. Having the data on a different server than the broker is probably a valuable feature. And we can define things in a way that a client, a subscriber, should be prepared to find things that way now. So we are explicitly not forbidding the topic data resource to be on a different server than the topic resource. And that also would be weird, because we wouldn't even be able to define what different server actually means here. So let's just not do this. So the client should be prepared to work with this. And for now, the broker could do this together with the data owner in a proprietary way. So that would be the state that is supported by the current draft. But I would think that the feature is actually going to be most valuable if there is a standard way for a data owner to do this. So a data owner can interoperate with different kinds of brokers and offer this functionality. And in that case, we need to standardize a protocol between the broker and the data owner. But we can do this in a second step. And we don't have to prevent clients from using that feature even before we have a standard protocol that defines how to implement it. So this is the way I would do this.
I agree. And also I want to clarify one thing, like the clients, so subscribers and publishers, there's no problem from their point of view. Like they can publish and subscribe on that topic data. Is, as you say, is the protocol between the two, the data producer and the broker, that is missing at the moment. Like how to keep track on the topic, how to keep the topic configuration updated and current. That's basically the main issue.
Yeah, and let's do that in a second document.
Sounds good. Christian?
Okay, I won't say much more about that topic, which I think we've all said about the same. So let's just not forbid it and then do the rest later. There is one other aspect about PubSub that has been irking me for quite some time, and I've only recently found words to express it. That is that I think it's doing a lot of things that are actually independent. So, for example, it's introducing metadata about resources, like distinguishing a topic from just a resource with things like having a tombstone representation and that kind of thing. We introduce a way of delegating authority on a resource, because especially when one comes with a mindset that Steinling could have been around for quite some time already, then in a sense, a PubSub, a data resource, is not so much different from just instance kind of creating a reverse proxy towards a resource that is actually under the authority of someone else, being the origins, being the publisher, even though the publisher may or may not be expressing it as a resource, but conceptually it is one. And as a third thing, it is allowing this PubSub broker, which is kind of acting as a reverse proxy, to populate the caches in a reversed role. So by doing a put instead of a notification. And we've made good experience with rolling things up that make a single protocol into different into kind of rolling different components of different layers up into a single protocol. I mean, Co-op does this by doing the messenger ID and token all in the same header. But I think it would be valuable to think about these far enough that we can see in PubSub where we draw the kind of where this falls into those different parts, just for the authors to have the rough idea, so that when we come to a point later where we want to explicitly to use some of that functionality without using the rest. For example, someone is finally getting around to doing sleepy devices and they want to populate the caching proxy that they have in front of their device by actively sending a new representation there, to allow that in a way that is compatible with what the PubSub broker is, without changing PubSub broker again. So I know that's a lot of things in the late stage, but I hope that if we discuss this and find the valuable parts, that we can split it up a bit, just conceptually, so that there can be a kind of. I don't think this will need much of a text change. It's just a bit of mindset that might help identify one or two pieces where things are reaching like way across the layers and shape them in a way that they are not that much linking the layers. So, for example, we have that concept of the and now that tab is gone. What do we call it? Not tombstone. A representation of the resource that it has when it has expired, and that is something that a resource can also have when it is being proxied, no matter whether it's reverse or forward proxy. And just thinking about the name again there, and whether that concept can apply there as well, might already help get things along later.
Thank you, Chris. I mean, that's very. So I mean, I even remember, if I'm not mistaken, at some point there was actually a draft on reverse proxy for Co-op, no? There was a very early version of a PubSub broker draft like 7 years ago that was very simple and drafty, and kind of proposed that as well. But I get the point that you're making, like to try to find this minimal. I don't know how to express it, like minimal components that are generic, and try not to bundle them into the PubSub draft as it is. And a lot of these, for example, like you mentioned the metadata about resources, so like that would be the topic configuration. So try to keep it. By the way, do you want to try to keep it generic in case that in the future there is another, there's further specifications of these little components, right? Is that the case, or is more like? Sorry.
I'd hope that things are kind of things like the metadata are generic enough that if something behaves like a topic, if any of those metadata apply, I could just as well describe them for a resource that is just sitting on my server. For example, things like it has an expiration date, something like that. Or it has a maximum number of people that I will allow to this to observe, for whatever that's good for, I don't know. But
right,
this is not related to thing being a topic, or if maybe it is, but then what does it mean to be a topic?
So is the property of a resource.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I think that is possible, and I mean, I think the draft is more or less generic in that sense, and the properties are also open to extension. There is just a handful of them that seem universal for any type of resource. But yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Basically, like in principle, I agree. I don't know if I fully capture it in the draft, but I'll be happy to modify it if I didn't.
Yeah, I have 2 points. One on this same point we've been discussing. I just agree with Kirsten and Christian. It's something to be done later in the future and engineered later in the future, as long as we don't prevent it altogether here. In that same spirit, what can help here is stating that if a topic data resource is hosted somewhere else than in the broker, we are aware that a certain number of issues will arise, and it's up to a dedicated protocol to address them properly. So it'd be good to have an early idea of those issues, and I think we started to identify those already. Otherwise, I had in mind some more input on the security considerations that were brought up several times. And some ACE document help. There are 2 of them, and they contribute in different way. The one that contributes the most, I think, is the PubSub profile of ACE. And basically, as is, it provides a possible security model that can be used as is here, but only for the operations of the publishers and subscribers. The other document that you mentioned in ACE, Oscar GM admin, well, that considers the group manager of Group Oscar. So the most helpful role that it can have here is more an inspiration for a future companion document providing a security model to use in PubSub, but for administrators. And I don't know, maybe in the future there will be such a document in ACE. I add this to the notes, by the way, but probably the security considerations of the core PubSub document can write something along these lines on what ACE can offer today.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I read the 700 lines of notes from the feedback, and I thank you very much for it. And the security part, basically, it requires deeper thinking and more time, and I just didn't have the time the other day. So, but I will duly note it, and I will try to address those as well in the security section. On the topic of so I think we are in agreement for the topic of the having topic data resource in another host. Like in the draft, I already had a section that I removed recently because as I started writing, I also noticed these problems, and I thought that they were too big to keep in this draft, as I mentioned. But I could maybe I could create a new section 3.5, for example. I don't know if you have the latest version open, but the 3.2 is about topic data interactions. And basically, section 3 is about publish and subscribe. So I could have a new section 3.5 in which I refer, whenever I mention topic data being hosted elsewhere, I refer to the current state, which is that a topic creator may choose to put this topic data elsewhere, but there are a certain number of problems that would require further work and a specific protocol that is not yet there. So be aware and so on. So like keep it a bit open. Would this be something that the group? Sorry, it's a bit of echo. Would this be something that the group agrees? Like, is this something, or the people in the call at least agrees to have, like that could be useful on how to express this in the draft, or is this section confusing?
Frankly, I think it would be totally fine to just say that, to just have the note that this link is not necessarily a relative references, but might point to any compatible URI. Leave it at that, and if someone really wants to implement that, then I think they would better be served by say, an early draft on how such a protocol could look like that at least addresses all the problems, without having the list of what could go wrong in the main document.
Basically, I will do, instead of a new section, smaller modifications in the topic creation and in the topic, in the definitions of the terminology, so that we don't mandate the broker to create the topic data, and instead leave it open for anybody to register any URL that they want as topic data. That's correct, right?
No, I think it would still be the broker that puts in a URI there, but how it arrives at this URI, whether like before it's creating this, it's talking to some other resource, or whether it's in full control of the resource naming there or whatsoever. That's implementation details.
Okay. Because in my mind, I thought that the authority comes from the whomever is creating the topic, not from the broker necessarily.
Maybe I'm wrong here.
No. I think that's what you're saying is actually what Marco was also agreeing on. But I think it depends on the use case, I suppose.
Well, there has to be the URI to the topic data resource wherever it is. If it is somewhere else, of course, the URI is pointing somewhere else, and it's possibly an absolute URI. But right. Yeah, it's practical implementation specific then.
Yes, but what I mean is, like, it's not the broker the one deciding that URI then for the topic data.
In general, then no, only if it's hosting the resource in itself. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Well, from the point of view of the client, of the subscriber, the broker is deciding. The client doesn't see that the broker really has a different source for this information, because the client is not aware that there is this new protocol we haven't designed yet is running in the background.
Right, but from the point of the publisher, the publication goes to a different server, so that could be, I don't know, that could raise an issue if the configuration is in one endpoint and the data in another. I don't know, but okay. But I think I get the general feeling, and it's more about wordsmithing the actual specifics about the draft. I think that's more or less it. I'm wondering, am I missing something? Is there anything I'm forgetting about for the next version that I should have covered? And I assuming here that people have read the draft, obviously, which I guess that's not the case.
Well, I read the draft is a bit weird, because that draft doesn't exist yet, right? So we would need the draft to read it.
I mean, it's in the GitHub repo. It's not. I
mean, it's kind of not yet fully available to the working group, and we need to get this done first, and then we can ask people to look at this.
Absolutely. I just didn't want to increase the version number more, just for the sake of it. So, version
99.
Sorry?
We can go up to 99.
Yes. Let's try to do that. Let's try to do that.
Okay, so we are waiting for this V13. What is your time schedule for that?
Sorry, I couldn't catch that. There was a bit of noise. Could you repeat?
What is your plan? When will you have a version 13?
So so I could submit what I have right now, if that helps to get the draft reviewed. Otherwise, I could write the security considerations and submit it before the cutoff for this IETF, basically. Whatever you like best.
Well, to me, this is kind of a continuum. So if you already know about some security considerations, write them down. If it slows you down, just publish the V13 with some TBDs in there.
Sure. I mean, I can. It's hard to find the time. That's the main problem. Like, there's out of deadlines for many other things. So
yes. So I just would be happy if this wouldn't come in on the 23rd, but maybe a little earlier. So we don't have to read all those drafts at the same time.
I understand. Let's do this. I'll do a version 13 now, but please, the security considerations, just ignore them. Otherwise, I'll try to write something more consistent, maybe tonight or tomorrow night or at some point at night, and submit it at the end of the week. But I cannot promise. I really can't.
Great.
Thanks a lot,
That's it.
Jaime and all, for a good discussion. Okay, the next point is Karsten with CoreConf.
If it's okay, I'll leave now. Thank you very much.
Can
Thank
you
you.
relinquish the slides?
Thanks,
Jaime?
bye.
Thanks.
Okay. We are a little bit later on the time schedule than I thought, so I think I will try to make this short. CoreConf is moving forward. Yang Siba, as you know, has been published a while ago. CoreSID is in ISG again. The telechat date is next week. There are various reviews coming in now, and one was a bit weird about Yang identities, trying to handle them like user identities. That doesn't work. These are different concepts. So I don't know where that discussion will go, but I think it's kind of not really. It's just a confusion of terms. Andy has made a pretty strong concern. I completely agree with him that we need to get some progress on publishing standard SID files for other IETF protocols. So we should start a second document for doing that. CoreSID says we don't actually put those SID files into the RFCs, but that is fine. We can work on them in the internet draft. And once we have the registries in place that are created by CoreSID, we can just move that information over. So the document in the end will be very short, essentially just pointing to those standard SID files and maybe providing some additional information on them. So that's something we could do to allay Andy's concern here. And probably we want to do this before the 19th. So that's all I think we can say about CoreSID at the moment, because it's really in ISG's hands. We have had a working group last call on CoreComai, which passed 3 weeks ago. And we had a couple of comments, one by Tom Petch, who looked at this with NetConf glasses. And there are a number of conventions that the NetConf NetMod people have that we are not following, mostly because we just don't know about those conventions. So Tom has given us some nice feedback on how to make this document more accessible to young people, including declaring normative appendices as normative, which is the inverse of what we normally do, which is declaring informative appendices as informative. But of course, we can always do the other thing as well. So that's useful. That will lead to some clerical work. Andy's comment has some more technical, some more detailed technical considerations. He also has a number of editorial points, and he would like to see more examples. That's probably a good idea, except that we are currently a bit starved on the infrastructure that are needed to validate them. So that's why examples are way more work than they should be. But he also has some more fundamental observations, and one is that the document really tries to eat the cake and still have it on the data store architecture. So on one hand, it just says CoreConf data stores have a unified, which means simple, architecture, but then there is a single paragraph that says, oh, if you want, you can NIMDA as well, the new management data architecture that is in RFC 8342. And that doesn't work. If we actually do support NIMDA, there is a number of problems that we have to address, that we have to say how it actually works with CoreConf, and we have way too little implementation experience to actually do this at this point. So my proposal here would be to just defining the unified form and leave NIMDA support to a separate document. And I hope this will not be groundbreakingly different, but there are some considerations about the various kinds of states of data stores that NIMDA data stores can be in, and we would have to define how this works in a CoreConf environment. So the assumption here, of course, is that for many CoAP based implementations, the data store will be pretty simple, so we will get by with this unified architecture. So the question, what happens if two management entities are changing the configuration of a temperature sensor at the same point in time? That is maybe less relevant to us than to other management environments. So that's one thing which I think I would have an answer for. The second point is really important. So in CoAP we have this request response architecture, and there is some text in the document that says if you are making accesses to the data store using keys in instance identifiers, so you have something like the list of your CoAP observation relationships, or we don't even have a Yang module for that, but let's assume we have something like that. Then you would maybe you want to access these instances separately using some keys like the IP address and the port number and whatever. And the trick that this document tries to pull is that all this information about which keys were used is not repeated in the response. So you get the pretty much naked information for these instance identifiers. You still get a SID for where in the schema tree you are, but you don't get the actual keys, like this is for IP address, this and that, and the port number, this and that, in the response. And that has two problems. One is that the media type we have defined there really is expecting a full instance identifier. So if some implementation actually processes this media type as defined, that creates nonsense. And the other probably, and he hasn't said it in this detail, but we might need to put some work into the correspondence rules. So how do we know which parts of the fetch do relate to which responses? So I'm not entirely sure what needs to be done there, but we at least should pay some attention here. So that's actually interesting. Again, we probably don't have that much implementation experience for this specific case, because we don't even have the Yang models that would do that for us. A third observation is that with the way the data store is currently defined, you essentially need to get the whole thing to find out what keys are available for certain instance identifiers. And that, of course, can become expensive. It may not be very expensive because the data stores for constraint devices are small, But one question is, do we need the depth and our fields parameters from RESTconf? And if not, what is our answer to the question? How do you find which keys are relevant for you? So again, I think that needs some design thinking, and this unfortunately cannot be discussed on a trivial example, because in the trivial example it just works. We probably need a bit more complex example to think about this problem. So again, maybe we have a way to say you can do this now, and we might want to add parameters later. But again, I think we need to have an example to assess this first. Yeah, then we have the requirements for error handling. I would have expected that we have all or nothing semantics, but we don't say that. So if you update 3 data items and the update of the third fails, then the updates of the other data items need to be rolled back. Yeah, so this might be done by reader-writer locks instead of rolling back. There are different implementation technologies here, but we need to find out whether this creates too much potential for deadlocks and or long delays. Yeah, then there were further questions like, can we completely elide the output Yang structure if there is no output defined for an RPC? Yeah, we probably can. So we would have to define rules for when and how to do that, which is also a piece of work, and we definitely need way more examples then to show what happens when this is not the case and when it is the case. Then there was a pay comment. I still have to ask Andy what exactly he meant about the extra layer in the encoding for 0. So if anybody knows what he meant, please tell me, or I will have to ask him. And finally, there is a pretty weird thing in Yang, which is the ordered by property of what is essentially an array. So there are some arrays that are ordered by the server. So the server might sort things in alphabetical order or show things in insertion order, but it's not something that the user, the client of the data store, is supposed to change, to control. And there are other arrays that are meant to be ordered by the client, so the server cannot go ahead and reorder things or just show them in insertion order or something. The order as created by the client needs to be preserved, and we are not taking apart that issue at all. So I don't even know what kinds of problems we have, because it's simply not discussed. So as you can see, there's quite some substance here. So my plan right now is to try to get as many fixes into a -17 as possible. So all the stuff about editorial issues, about Yang document conventions that we have violated, we can probably simply do this, and then we can focus on the more fundamental questions, probably by turning them into GitHub issues and then doing a little bit of design team meeting, and maybe get some wider feedback in Prague. So by Prague, we should have these issues captured and maybe have the first comments on those issues in GitHub. So I would have loved to just put a lid on these things now, but there are some issues, and as I said, maybe for most of the issues the answer is there might be a document later that provides a way to do this. But we actually have to decide this consciously. We cannot just push all these comments away. So this is the status of COMI, which doesn't mean that you cannot implement COMI today. Just for those cases which are discussed in the document, it works quite well. It's just that Yang is this absolutely humongous universe in which there are all these things that are going on, and you have to relate to these things. Questions? Comments?
Yeah, just a side comment, if they don't change the preliminary agenda too much, core should stay in the second half of the week. So if we manage to have the whole discussion in the first half of the week, then we may have something good to confirm during the core session.
Okay, do you happen to know when the NetMod meeting is?
I don't remember that. We can check.
Well, NetConf is on Tuesday, and NetMod is also on Tuesday. So yeah, maybe if we carry some of these issues into those meetings, they might have a full agenda yet. But maybe we can at least do heads up there, so we get some input during the week. Makes sense.
Core is on Thursday right now. Let's see what happens.
I
Okay,
have seen
thank you.
very little feedback. The feedback would have to come until today, so I'm not sure that there will be much in the way of changes.
Okay, any more question, comment for Carsten? Okay, if none, thank you, Carsten. Let's move to ESCO for Group 1bis.
Yep. Just seeing where I do have to click for the slides. Ah, okay. Now I get the pop-up.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so this slides were basically based on the review comments that we got from John, who could not be here in the meeting, I understand. But anyway, we can discuss it. So we picked a few of the topics that I think require further discussion from this. And those are shown on slide 2. So I've given them names, actually, all these issues. So they were originally, they were a bit formulated a bit differently. So here are 4 issues. We also have a link here to the GitHub branch where we process the new text based on the comments. But I'll quickly move on to the first comment then. So this is about using the experimental or obsolete protocol. So in the context on the top here of the slide, you can see the text from the draft, basically. And the sentence highlighted in bold that basically says that it's not recommended to use the experimental protocol from RFC 7390. And now the feedback from John is that, of course, that just because it's experimental doesn't mean that something is not recommended to be used. So that points to maybe a thing that we should have phrased differently. So I was guessing that, yeah, one of the possible things that we meant was also that it's not recommended because we actually obsolete RFC 7390. So this could be one of the reasons why we wrote this. Yeah, maybe also as a background, we did add this sentence after working group last call comments that we need to clarify why we use the past tense. So we say that the RFC 7390 defined, so it uses the past tense. So why do we do that? Why not just present tense here? It still defines the experimental protocol. So this was just added to clarify our past tense. But after some discussion, we think that as authors, well, there's actually no harm in using the experimental protocol. It's still available. And then I'll move on to the next slide just to show some proposed solutions. So in terms of the text, what do we need to do to resolve this comment? So we can just remove the sentence and say, okay, the RFC defines the experimental protocol, and we don't say anything more about it. So it's left as an exercise to the reader if the obsolescence of the draft will have impact on using that protocol, yes or no. To be honest, I also don't know if that has any impact. But that's one first thing we can do. I see Karsten has his hand up. Have some input here.
Yeah, I must admit that I think about this protocol in the past tense, and I would like to stick with that. So this was an attempt at the time, and I don't think we actually want to recommend using that. I mean, yes, you still can use it, but it's not the direction that we would guide people to use. So it's been a long time since I looked at that, so I cannot say why I'm thinking that. But that was when we discussed overhauling 7390. That was essentially what we had in mind, that we really didn't find a good use for this protocol. So if that has changed, I'd really like to know that. And we shouldn't change the status, the perceived status of this experimental protocol just based on some grammar issues here. So an experiment can end. And for me, the experiment here ended by seeing nobody implemented this stuff. So that was something we learned from the experiment. And we may not have formally recorded the reasons why implementations didn't happen, but I think if we spend a little bit of effort, we might be able to do that.
Okay, so in that case, you can think of it as obsoleting the protocol as well, along with the rest of the RFC, and thereby concluding the experiment. No. So let me think, the comment was actually that wouldn't it be better to just still use that experimental protocol as opposed to something completely proprietary for that? But that is if the experimental protocol fits, of course, the requirements of the use case.
Esko, if you go back to the previous slide, yet another radical solution is just removing all the text except for the first sentence. So finishing at co-op group creation.
Yeah, that means not mentioning the
Not even
protocol.
mentioning.
Yeah. So
would that be aligned with your thought, Karsten?
Well, yes, we could just add that 7390 defined an experimental protocol and that experiment has concluded.
Yeah, that would also be fine for me to mention.
Okay, basically removing the text in bold.
Yeah, and changing, I think, the text to say that the experiment concluded.
Yeah.
or hereby the experiment is concluded. Yeah.
Well, it was concluded a long time before that.
Before, yeah. Okay, yeah. So I would find that okay as a solution. So can propose some text based on that, I think. Marco, also okay?
Yeah. Sounds very good. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay, then we can maybe move on to the next issue. I see no more hands here. Yeah, so there was another aspect we have is the use of unsecured discovery. So co-op, multicast, no-sec mode for discovery. We do mention in, for example, section 6.1 that early discovery of devices and resources is a typical use case where the no-sec mode is relevant. Of course, the danger here, as from the review remark, is like, okay, this is something that people might use as an argument to move the hard problem of security away to somewhere else. Like saying, okay, oh, I have a discovery use case, so I just forget about the security. And the comment says, well, we need maybe concrete examples of secure deployments where this makes sense to use no-sec mode. So I think we could clarify this a little bit. So what do we mean with early discovery? What I had in mind here was basically today's solutions for secure device bootstrap. So there are some variants out there, and not all of these use co-op in any way, but they can also use other message types. And if you have a secure bootstrap solution, then there is always one of the steps is an unsecured discovery step. So it's something that's always there and cannot be removed. Otherwise, you would not have that method at all. And a concrete example that uses co-op as one of the possible discovery options is constrained brewski. So there's a link put here. We now refer to it as C brewski. And the draft name is draft IETF Anima constraint voucher. And this is still being developed in the Anima working group. So we could actually mention that as a possible solution. That's also the one on top. So we can make an informative reference and say that this is a secure method, but it does use a co-op no-sec discovery step in the very beginning. So the rest of the process adds the security, and the unsecure part basically is embedded in that as part of the overall method. And of course, the co-op no-sec communication is not used for any application communication like sensor data, actuator changes, etc. That uses all secured communication, or that's supposed to use that. So that's one option we could do there. Second one, we could say we don't make a specific reference, but we just refer in general to secure bootstrap methods as a way that could use co-op no-sec, or maybe a future method that could use co-op no-sec. And then we probably have to explain a bit why this initial discovery step is not secured. So as a background, it comes from the logistic assumptions that I used. So device is made in the factory, then sold through resellers, and then it ends up at a future, basically at the customer where it's turned on for the first time, and it doesn't know a priori where it will end up, what's the environment. So it doesn't have any security keys related to that specific environment. So the secure bootstrap process makes sure that the device can securely join that new network that it doesn't know yet. You could, of course, make that more secure by adding all the required keys, etc., permissions already into the device at the factory, but that's requires some logistics operations that are difficult. Basically drives up the cost and the effort to get the devices at the customer side. Reduces flexibility as well. So there's a couple of methods that use secure bootstrap, so mostly Brewski and variants are listed here. So I'm okay with either approach here, so we could take these solutions or something else if anyone has ideas on that. Any thoughts on this?
From my point of view, the first option sounds better because it's more explicit and give you a reference, but that doesn't exclude altogether the second one, right? It's just more information, more context.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. If the comment was about having a concrete use case, well, the top one is more concrete.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so that seems fine. We can propose some text for that, I think. Okay. Thanks. If no more comments, we'll move on to the next issue. 3 out of 4 we are now. So we have the sentence sensitive and mission critical, at some different places in the draft, and also the opposite non-sensitive and non-critical use cases is used. So for the top one, we say we require security, while for the bottom one, the non-sensitive ones, we say, okay, we do allow no-sec to be used in this case. And the comment was that, well, it should rather be made a bit more strict. So the IETF view would be use security unless it's really proven to be not sensitive. So it's like, if in doubt, use security, basically. And it also mentions zero trust encryption methods that require usually encryption everywhere or almost everywhere. I think that's for me, the authors, it's agreed. Although the encryption everywhere does not apply to all places, like secure bootstrap is a notable exception, I think, to that. So the security is not, like from message 1 already present, but comes later in the process. So I think we can require this, updated text to make this clear that it's like, okay, you use security unless it's proven to be a not sensitive application, like maybe an example toy application or something where it's not required, absolutely not required.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time with these terms like sensitive and mission critical and so on, because in the end you have security objectives, and some of these may be obvious, some of them may be less obvious because, for instance, they are privacy related. So the objectives are only created by people actually doing something that has privacy issues. And I'd rather come from those security objectives and whether they can be fulfilled in this environment than by saying something is sensitive or non-sensitive, and therefore we can do no-sec or need security. So one important point here is, and that actually comes up in the secure discovery, of course, is that we have this concept of proximity. And that concept of proximity can provide some form of security that is different from the kind of security that we normally have in mind, but that is totally appropriate to do some steps in the life cycle of a device. So we may have steps in the life cycle, even if the device is sensitive in the end, because it's used by children, and we don't want their privacy information to leak out. The way that device is actually integrated into the household may use steps that are not yet assuming the presence of this sensitive information. Things like that, and so it becomes really more complicated than just having these binary and ill-defined words like sensitive and mission critical.
That's right. So then in that case, it would be more kind of rephrasing it according to the security requirements and objectives of a particular application.
Right.
And that the protocol should be aligned with that, of course. Yeah, let's see what I had in mind for proposed solution. So this is some text that is already proposed here. Basically to replace two mentions of these sensitive mission critical applications. Yeah, so the proposal of the text is basically kind of turning around the argument. So the new text basically says, okay, it must be protected by using group or score, with possible exception mentioned here. So that's exceptions are the non-sensitive, non-critical applications, or specific, well-defined steps where security is not viable or intrinsically unattainable. Then we come back to this early discovery example again.
Yeah, but again, security is always attainable. The question is what kind of security? What are the actual security objectives? So when I'm running around in the university, I'm in no-sec mode. People can talk me up. But we need to progress from that no-sec mode to a mode where we actually know who we are before we can discuss any project details or something. So the question is really whether we have security or not, but what we actually gain by having that communication. And if there is no way to ever get to a place where we have security, that is a problem. And there's also a problem if we can do DOS based on the unsecured part. But saying that security is not attainable, I'm not sure that is actually what's going on.
Yeah, I think the unattainable means that that is like would be like a specific step of a process, and maybe the process can attain security, but it's not possible, for example, to obtain it already in step one of the process, because
right,
the whole point of the process is to get there in step.
So the whole DNS system wouldn't work if we didn't have a lot of steps that require very little security.
Right, yeah. So that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, the exception is these steps where it's just not possible to start from directly with securing everything. So these are the exceptions here.
Yeah, in particular, if you don't know who you want to be talking to, it's really hard to secure that communication. And so we have protocols like Brewski that let you find out who you want to be talking to. And
that's right. Yeah.
I think that's really important to say. We cannot sprinkle some security pixie dust on those steps in our life cycle because we just don't know enough to be secure.
Yep. Okay, but it's still a bit of a binary recommendation that we give. Like, okay, it's like you must use Drupal core for security, and there are a couple of exceptions. That's the other case. So it's like yes or no. I'm not sure if it's kind of if we can avoid that altogether.
Yeah, so again, let's talk about security objectives, and if the security objectives don't allow a certain kind of communication to work in OSEC mode, then don't do that.
Yeah, so maybe that's one way is to phrase it in those terms, like mention security objectives of the specific application, and perhaps mention some examples where no sanctions is used and why.
Not just the application, but also the specific step in the workflow that this application goes through.
Yeah. Okay, then maybe we can update the text to that, like base it on the concept of the security objectives. Okay, we'll see if we can come up with something there. I think it requires some more thinking, but
as a quick input, it's I think about steps, specific steps that are proven to not require security or to not afford it. So that would avoid the talking of applications in general and to use the adjective sensitive and critical. It puts the focus on exact steps, and it's about requiring or affording security. Something like that.
Yeah, I hope that's clear enough. But we can think about this.
Yeah.
Maybe with some example would help to clarify that. Okay.
Thanks, Carsten.
Yeah. I don't hear anything.
No, I'm done. I was just thanking Carsten.
Oh, okay. Oh, he still has his hand up, so that's why. Okay, I'll move to number 4. So that was the remark on the co-op group. That basically in the text we say it has an optional address and an optional port, while in the figure you can see in the red box on the screen it has a mandatory address and a mandatory port. So that seems to conflict. That is basically context, so conflicting with the text. And our response is then as follows. So what we intended was that basically the first section, 211, defines the co-op group as shown in the picture. So we have mandatory attributes of the address and the port number, which are always there, so it's not optional. And then the other section, a bit later, so 2211, defines more how the co-op groups are named. And the rules for the name are different because we say that the name is actually the group URI. And the URI is a bit of a different thing here. So it doesn't have a mandatory IP multicast address, but it may be present as a literal. But it also may be not present in case a host name isn't there. So then you don't see an actual multicast address. The UDP port number may be there or it may not be there. In the last case, it will be the default co-op port. So this was the background. And then we have a possible solution here. So we'd like to update the text, and there's a detailed proposal given here. So first we say that the co-op group is always defined by the two properties. So there's an address and there's a port. But for practical purposes, it's identified and named by the authority component in the group URI. And then we explain that this authority component contains the host and an optional port number. And I think this text still needs a little bit of simplification because it reads a bit awkwardly, long sentences and so on, with repetition. But the idea is that the host subcomponent could directly define the address. In that case, well, you have the address, but it could also have a host name. In that case, you first need to do the step of resolving the host name to an IP address, and then you have the address. So I think if you explain this better, then it should not be a contradiction anymore between the text and the figure, you think?
Yeah, I think that the problem here is that to actually exercise IP multicast, you need to know the address. There's no way around that. So at that step, at that point in the procedure, you need to know the multicast address. But you can actually talk about groups in many ways. So for instance, set up security for groups before you know that multicast address. So saying that this information is mandatory or optional only makes sense in the considering where we are in the process of actually using these groups.
Yeah, okay, I see that the point is like you could have a configured group that only has a host name, and then only later on when it gets resolved, basically you get the address. But I think what we want to talk about is maybe the specific group communication request. Basically, you send out the co-op multicast, and at that point in time, you will need to know the concrete IP address to where to send it to. So in that sense, it's mandatory. Otherwise, you can't perform the group communication at all. But you're right in sense, like if you define like someone comes to configure devices and enters the co-op group, at that point in time, it can be identified by just the name, host name, for example. Exactly. But then the real co-op group is not yet known. So the parameters are not yet known, although it does have a name at that point.
Okay.
Any comments, Rickard? You have one?
Yeah, just a thought from my side. If the co-op group has a name, shouldn't the name also be shown in the figure?
Ah, okay. I see what you mean. So it's the basically we say the naming is done by the authority component in the group URI. So we could just.
So it's like derived from those two,
have a name as well there.
Yeah, if that's like a mandatory aspect of the co-op group that it has a name and that's why it's identified by. Yeah, perhaps it should also be in the.
Yeah, well, even figure. That's not strictly mandatory. You could say I just define two parameters, so it's an address and a port, and I don't even bother to define any URI or authority of that. So I don't have a name, but okay. As long as you have an address and a port, you will automatically have a name whether you want it or not.
Right. So in some cases, the name can be derived from the address and the port, but in some cases it cannot, because if the name is a host name, it's like the reverse. You derive the IP from the host name instead. So.
Yeah, and there can be multiple names as well. That's what we explain in the draft. So you can have aliases, for example. You can have the basically the port explicitly defined or left out, and it could still be the same, pointing to the same group.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So that's also something to take into account. Yeah.
Yeah, one note I noticed only now for consistency on the top left of the figure for application group. Maybe we can just say application group name, like we are doing for the security group, and probably we are going to do for the co-op group.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and that was another review comment, I think. Please use the complete name and not say just group, but type of group. Okay, so that requires some more thinking, but this was definitely good input. think about that. So we have different considerations at, like, let's say, creation time or usage time for the co-op group. Now let's see if we can do something with that. All right. So I think we're kind of out of time for this session, and also this was my last slide.
Yes, thank you very much, Esko. And on the next 2 items, can you perhaps start a thread each on the mailing list?
Yep, either will be okay.
Probably the text from these notes as is good enough.
Yeah.
Actually, thanks for that. And on the final points, yeah, not super urgent. We just wanted to mention the plan for the interim meetings after Prague, and it's mostly about synchronizing with CBOR, actually. And Christian, I can send a separate mail to you and Barry if you can just have a look at that, but it's the usual cadence, and if you see no problem, we can start thinking of this. Christian, if you're talking, I can't hear you. Cadence will be fine. Okay, we'll send this around on the list anyway, also to confirm with the working group. Okay, that said, since we are out of time, thanks a lot for your time today. Thanks a lot, Christian, for taking notes. Really appreciate it. Talk to you again in 2 weeks. Have a good cutoff.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Christian had a request to stick
Christian
around.
Oh,
yes. So we could use the room, even if this is no longer as a working group meeting, we could use the room to maybe
totally.
talk about the DNSSD stuff.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, that's fine for me. I still have a little bit of time now.
So yeah, then go ahead, let's go.
I think Christian had a problem with his audio, it seems.
He left, I think he's trying to rejoin.
Oh, okay. That should maybe help. Yeah, I think I was looking for the text for the item I have that provides maybe some context. It'd be nice to get that on the screen. See if there's a way to share the screen. Maybe I'll try that. Ask to share screen.
Yeah.
Choose what to share. Okay, then I'll just choose the window here. Yeah, so this was the question I had put forward. So I know we already had quite some work to map between DNS-SD and core link format. And I was based on recent work a request, like, isn't there just a simple, straightforward way to kind of take a DNS-SD service definition and then map it to a core link format link that will basically advertise that service available at a specific port. And yeah, the idea was there, like, hey, can we make that a generic mapping? So otherwise you have to define specific basically core link format parameters that are specific to the application at hand. And if you already have that defined for DNS-SD, which we anyway do, then why not have a method to simply map that. So I think the things to map are just mentioned under point 2 here of the simple use case. So that's things like the service instance name, a few parameters, the fixed parameters of the SRV record, and the data of the text record.
Yeah, so my answer to this would be Sure, we could do that. The way DNSSD is representing service information is very contorted. So you're not mentioning PTR records here, which you also need to put together DNSSD information. And I wouldn't be particularly happy if people were starting to think you have to go through the same contortions to do CoAP discovery as well. So if we find a way that actually reduces the DNSSD complexity, which in the end is simply caused by the fact that DNS is a really lousy substrate for DNSSD, we don't have to be that lousy. So if we can get a mapping that avoids the contortions, I would be much happier.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I don't think that we want to replicate like all the things with records that are done. But yeah, mostly there are a few things that are always typically being done in always the same way indeed. So there's the PTR record. So that's basically just a way to say, okay, we have a service type and we have a specific instance name. So it's not, just so basically having a string for the type and a string for the name. And there is some parameters like priority related, and then there's the free-form text record data, which is different for each service.
Yeah, so if we can define an abstract form of the DNSSD data that is not stuck on the DNS representation level, but actually defines what the information means, we might be in a better position to map this to core discovery.
Yeah.
And I cannot do the work because I'm not an DNSSD expert, but I have seen the complexity, so I would be really happy if we could do this from the abstract point of view and not from the specific DNS representation format.
Yeah, I think the problem is made easier by doing just one way and not dual ways. Like suppose you want to encode everything that core link format provides in DNS. So I think that will be really complex. So
certainly, yes.
So that's maybe not a good goal in that respect. But I can maybe start reading up on the previous documents on this topic, just get a sense of what was thought about there, and then see if I can come up with anything. Based on the kind of minimal data that should be in the service representation.
Great.
All right.
So we used these 8 minutes well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's some good input. And,
we lost Christian anyway. Probably he had major problems even in rejoining, but
okay.
Yeah.
It's more than just the mute button.
Please start the threads on the list anyway.
Yeah.
On what points you may get more.
Okay, I will try to do that this week. Yeah. Great. Okay. Then
thanks a lot. Talk to you in 2 weeks.
Yeah. See you then.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.